So my name is Rafael Pass, and I'm going to talk about Thunderella. This is a joint work with Elaine Shi. It's always tough to follow a talk of Silvio. Silvio was my advisor, actually. I graduated 10 years ago with him. So this is going to be about a new type of blockchain that is going to be very, very fast if everything goes fine. And if things don't go well, in that case, it's going to collapse down to a normal blockchain. So what is this task that we'd like to achieve? State machine replication or a linearly ordered log. We just like to have a way to linearize a bunch of transactions, just like a blockchain. And the two properties that we care about, just like in Silvio's talk, are consistency and liveness. Consistency is that any two nodes here should agree on the order of these transactions. We should all agree on them being the same. And liveness is that we should always be able to add new transactions. We should not be able, an attacker should not be able to stop this whole computation. All right? That's exactly the two properties we want from a blockchain. And this problem has actually been studied for a long time. In the classic distributed computing literature, this is called consensus. And there's a lot of these protocols out there. And I would refer to this as kind of the classical world and the classical type of consensus protocols. And more recently, we now have these new blockchain-style protocols. And these two worlds have their own features. In particular, the classical protocols, starting with PBFT and Paxos and so on, they are really, really fast, at least in a small scale. So when I say fast here, what I mean is that we don't need any synchronicity assumptions. If the network is fast, we're confirming transactions as fast as the actual network. So if I'm letting through messages at 1 millisecond, transactions are confirmed every millisecond. On the other hand, these things are very complex. They're not easy to implement, and typically they're implemented on 10 nodes at most. In fact, usually it's even less, maybe just 3. In contrast, these blockchain protocols are extremely, extremely simple to implement, starting with Nakamoto's protocol. Very simple, and they'll also have additional robustness properties. On the other hand, they're slow. As we know, transactions get confirmed in Nakamoto's protocol every 10 minutes. And then we're not even sure that they're confirmed. We need to wait for another set of blocks. And here I'm referring to both proof-of-work style blockchains and proof-of-stake style blockchains. As we saw in Silvio's talk, Algorand is a very nice method that improves the speed. So it becomes a lot faster, but it still has these synchronicity assumptions which make it make the protocol run in time that is proportional to the worst case latency of the network. So it's still a lot slower than these very simple or very fast asynchronous protocols. So our goal today is to present something that's basically here, that gets the best of both worlds. And so what is the idea? We want something that's as simple and as robust, as secure as a blockchain. But if things are going fine, then it's going to be basically instantaneous confirmation, just like these asynchronous protocols. When things go bad, we're going to fall back to the blockchain. So the blockchain is only going to be there kind of as a way to help us, to support us when something goes wrong. Okay, so that's a key idea. And it's going to be a way to kind of take a blockchain and run it just underlying, and it's only going to be used as a kind of yelling channel. That when something goes wrong, then we use the blockchain to yell, and that will help us to kind of recover into a slow mode. But otherwise, if things are going well, we're going to be very, very fast. Okay, so to explain how this works, I'm going to start by explaining a little bit about classical protocols. And then later on, we're going to try to show how to leverage a blockchain in order to resolve some of the issues with the classical protocols. OK, so here's a very typical approach, very, very simple approach, a starting point for getting a classical consensus protocol. So we have some leader, this guy, and he will propose transactions with some sequence number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he sends it to all these other players. This is some kind of committee. Usually there are only a few, like this. This committee, what they do is whenever they get a transaction with some sequence numbers, they will acknowledge it, so they will sign it and send it back to the leader, and in fact, then send it to everybody. So the key point here is that the committee, if I get 2 transactions with the same sequence number, I'm only going to acknowledge one of them. And so it's a very simple protocol. I send out as a leader, you acknowledge. And now we're going to say that if a transaction has enough acknowledgements, it's viewed as confirmed. How many do we need? Well, a typical case is if we want a protocol that's secure, assuming 2/3 of the players are honest, then we need to wait for slightly more than 2/3 confirmations. And the reason this works, it's a very simple intersection argument, which if you've seen it before, it's easy. If you haven't, it's going to be too fast. But basically, the idea is that if two guys have 2/3, more than 2/3 acknowledgements on some confirmation, since there are only 1/3 bad guys out there, only 1/3 of these things can be corrupted. And that means that each guy has at least another 1/3 plus 1 confirmation that are honest. So there will be at least one of these that needs to be in the intersection, and therefore it needs to be the same. Okay? I went over it very fast, but it's easy to show, and this is kind of the key property that underlies all these protocols. Okay, so therefore they're going to be the same. Great. So what do we have here? We have a nice protocol that works, that is consistent, and it's going to be live, assuming our leader here is honest. So if the leader sends out things correctly, consistency will hold and liveness holds. Now the problem, of course, is why should this leader be honest? He doesn't have to be honest always. And if he's not honest, consistency actually holds still. This intersection argument still holds no matter if this guy is honest or not. But we don't have liveness. So the leader, if he's bad, he can shut things down. Does it make sense? So consistency always holds, but if the leader is bad, then the protocol just shuts down. So how do we achieve liveness? This is where things become really complicated. So these classic PBFT protocols are extremely, extremely complicated, and it's only to deal with this issue, that sometimes the leader goes down for some reason. We need to notice this. We need to deal with it. We need to switch him out to a new leader, and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of consistency issues that arise. Okay? Now, luckily, I don't have to tell you what happens here, because we're going to replace this complicated recovery path with something else. And so that's our idea. We're going to, oh, actually, before I go to our idea, indeed, some blockchain companies out there simply ignore the second recovery path. They only implement the first thing and just hope the leader doesn't go down. And if the leader goes down, we're going to manually try to deal with this thing. Okay? So that's maybe okay if the leader doesn't go down very often, but when it goes down, what do you do? So our approach will be to now leverage blockchains to deal with this recovery. So the idea is, instead of doing this whole messy thing that's so complicated, we're going to use a blockchain that's underlying the fact that we have a blockchain running, and use that in order to do this recovery. This is a paradigm you can use both in the permissionless proof of work setting or in the proof of stake setting. I refer to proof of stake setting as being permission because you have some kind of public key infrastructure set up already. So you can do it in both of these things. I'm going to focus for simplicity on the proof of work setting. But basically, everything I say goes through with almost no change if you replace a proof of work blockchain with a proof of stake blockchain. OK, so in our setup, we're going to have a few different actors. The first one is we're going to have a leader. This leader, I'm going to refer to him as an accelerator. His job is to help transactions get confirmed faster. If you want, you can think of this kind of as a relay network. His only job there is to make things get confirmed faster. Okay. We have the classical blockchain miners for some underlying blockchain. And then we also have some committee. This committee can be selected either as stakeholders of the system, if you have a cryptocurrency, or recent miners, or some other method of selecting them. If you select them as recent miners, that's potentially the easiest way, because then the only thing to think about is what fraction of the miners are honest. Does that make sense? So I have a leader, he's some designated guy, and I'm going to select a committee based on recent miners, let's say. What I want is that if this guy is honest and online and actually working properly, if the accelerator is working properly, and out of the people I selected to the committee, 3/4 are honest and active, then we're going to get instant confirmation. It's going to be as fast as just the first step of these protocols. Okay? However, I'm going to still require security, even if this guy deviates in arbitrary ways, and even as long as just a majority of the miners and consequently the committee is honest. So the 3/4 assumption is only in the optimistic case, but robustness, all the security properties still hold as long as 50% are honest. Make sense? Okay. So why 3/4? The reason we get 3/4 instead of 1/2 there is exactly for this intersection argument. Since we want security assuming half of them could be bad, you need to get 3/4 acknowledgements to make this argument go through in this case. Because you have 3/4, half of them are bad, half of them are bad, then you're going to get more than a majority that are good, and therefore one of them need to intersect. All right, so now my plan is to try to go over this protocol. I'm going to go over it kind of fast. I'm not going to give you the most optimized version, but it's not hard to modify it to become more optimized. So this is what happens. Just as before, we start off having the accelerator. He proposes transactions with sequence numbers. So whenever you want to get a transaction included in this blockchain, you send it to the accelerator. He will linearize everything, and he will sign it. Okay? He signs it and sends it to the committee. The committee acknowledges, just as before. And I'm going to call a transaction notarized if I have 3/4 acknowledgements on it. Okay? Now, users will view the current confirmed part of the blockchain as the maximal sequence with no gaps into it that is notarized. So the maximal sequence of transactions with no gaps that has been notarized, that I can output. That has been fully confirmed. And I can output that instantaneously. Okay, so whenever I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that have been signed by the leader and notarized by 3/4 of the committee, if so, I can output it instantaneously. Okay? So this is all very good, but as you said, this is not live, right? This guy, if he's bad, he can shut things down. So we need to have a way of dealing with that. And this is how we're going to deal with it. We have this blockchain running in a background, and we're going to use the blockchain as this yelling channel. So whenever we notice that this guy is acting badly, we would like to rat him out and maybe change him or shut things down. Okay? So think of it as if I have some evidence that the leader is bad, in that case, we're going to enter the slow mode. Now, the point is, I need to have a way to make sure, so let's actually, both of these steps are somewhat subtle, but let's start with the first one. How do we not make sure that this guy's bad, that he did something wrong? The point is, I don't want people to be able to falsely accuse the leader. Because if somebody can falsely accuse the leader, then they will be able to shut this down also. So that wouldn't be good. If the leader is actually acting honestly, then nobody should be allowed to just shut him down. So we need to have a way to make sure that if he was misbehaving, everybody can notice it. But if he wasn't, we should not be able to do that. So how do we do this? And here's one simple idea that's not highly optimized. Let's say that everybody always are going to put all the transactions they see also on the blockchain. Okay? So I'm going to put in things that I've seen notarized and things that I haven't seen notarized. Okay, so let's say this red thing has not been notarized. The leader then is supposed to also look at the blockchain, and whenever he sees a new transaction there, he should sign it and send it out and get it notarized also. That's his job. Now, if I've seen K blocks go by with a transaction not being notarized within that time, then I know that the leader or the committee must be wrong, must be bad. Because it's his job to pick things up from the chain and get them notarized. And if he hasn't done that in K steps, since the underlying blockchain is live, then I know that this guy's a cheater, or he's just been taken down, or the committee has been taken down. So one of these things must have happened. Right? Does it make sense? So if I see something on the blockchain that hasn't been confirmed for a long period of time, then I know that either the leader or the committee must be misbehaving somehow. Okay. So in that case, intuitively, we'd like to enter a slow mode. So when this happens, when we notice this, we'd like to enter a slow mode. Okay. Let me just mention that in this approach that I gave here, everybody puts everything on the blockchain. So you can actually do a lot better. You can only start putting things onto the blockchain when you notice that your transaction is not getting incorporated. And that makes a much more scalable solution. But let me not mention that too much more. OK, so we have now a way of noticing when the leader potentially is misbehaving, either leader or committee. And if so, we'd like to enter the slow mode. OK? So slow mode means we shut down this leader, and we're going to just go back to the underlying blockchain. Okay, so we just confirm transactions on the blockchain. Once we're in the slow mode, we can again elect maybe a new leader somehow and restart the fast path again. So it's still a little bit tricky, actually, how to enter the slow mode. Because when I notice that the leader is not confirming transactions, maybe you have output you have seen maybe a longer sequence of notarized things than I have. So we're not in agreement on the sequences we currently have seen. And so before we can switch to this new slow blockchain, we need to have agreement on this set of transactions we've seen. Okay? And this looks like a new consensus problem in its own. How do we agree on this set of transactions? Now, luckily, we have this blockchain underlying, and we can use the blockchain again to resolve these inconsistencies. So what we do is before we enter the slow mode, we have this grace period. So after I notice the leader is corrupted or just not functioning well, we're entering this grace period. A grace period is a period of time where people are supposed to put. So the committee stops acknowledging things, so we won't get anything new that's notarized. And everybody is supposed to put all the notarized transactions they have seen onto the blockchain. So no new things get notarized, but everybody can transmit to the blockchain everything notarized that they have seen so far. And that means that if we wait sufficiently long, we now, on the blockchain, get agreement on the longest confirmed lucky sequence. So at the end of this period, everybody has agreed on the longest lucky sequence that been confirmed, and then we can safely, at this point, switch over to the slow blockchain. Okay? And once you're at the slow blockchain, now you can find a new leader and switch over to this new guy and hopefully go back to the fast mode again. So it's only when this leader is misbehaving that we're entering this slow mode, and then we can recover and go back into this fast transaction mode. So summarizing, we have this slow blockchain that's underlying. It's only used as a yelling channel. We have instead this very fast single round or two-message confirmation protocol that's running most of the time. When the leader or the committee is misbehaving, people can yell and say that the transactions are not getting incorporated. They yell onto the blockchain. At this point, we're going to enter this grace period where we use the slow blockchain to agree on the set of transactions we've seen so far. Once we've done that, we're entering a slow mode where we can elect a new leader and regain the fast mode. Okay. And so to summarizing, what we have now is this two-phase or two modes of running this protocol. If everything is going well, the leader is good, a majority of the miners are honest, and 3/4 of the committee are honest. If so, everything is blazing fast, instantaneous. In fact, much faster than this PBFT protocols. It really is just 2 network rounds. So if the network is just 1 second or 1 millisecond, you will get everything confirmed in 1 millisecond. But security still holds under the same assumptions as Nakamoto's classic blockchain. That is, even if the accelerator is deviating, we still have security, as long as a majority of the miners are honest. Okay, so security has not been affected.
Hey, Rafael, we have 5 minutes, so you can either continue or and people can talk to you at a break, or you can go to Q&A. Up to you.
Sure. Yeah. So this was all basically, and we're currently implementing this thing, and an open source implementation should arise there shortly. Right now, there's nothing there, but yeah.
Anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Are there any questions?
Anthony, Andrew.
Do you have any plans for if there's a network partition, or do you not cover that?
If there's a network partition?
Yes.
For what? For the underlying blockchain, or?
Just say that you have
that's
two
the same,
parts of your network that can't talk to each other.
I don't
very
resolve
much.
any issues that the underlying blockchain is not resolving, right? So if the underlying blockchain can handle some kind of network partition, I will be able to do it also, and otherwise not. So you need to, you do need to set the hardness of the underlying blockchain appropriately to handle the type of network partition you want to handle.
Okay, thank you.
So it really is just a bootstrapping method of taking something that's slow and making it optimistically fast. Let me also mention this 3/4 bound is actually tight. You need to assume 3/4 to be honest optimistically if you want it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not quite understand how do you achieve instant confirmation, because to select the because you need to collect evidence on the blockchain, right? You still need to verify.
No. So okay. So as I said, so this thing what I showed here was the evidence is only put on the blockchain afterwards. You get things confirmed whenever you have seen a lucky sequence, so a long sequence of notarized transactions, you output it straight away. You can output straight away the maximal longest sequence of transactions that are notarized. And so notarized just means that the leader signed it and the committee signed it. You can output it straight away.
So when you recover the things, you still need to go back to that point, right? I mean,
no. That is why we have this recovery phase, so that people can put all these notarized transactions onto the blockchain before you enter slow mode.
Okay, so you mean in the blockchain, it is possible that some block collect some not correct transactions? Is this okay in your
Yeah, the blockchain, during the optimistic phase, the blockchain is only used to collect evidence of cheating. That's the only thing it's used for. It's a yelling channel. And it's only when you enter the slow mode that you transition to confirming transactions on the blockchain.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, yeah. I think that actually you touched a bit security properties in case of dishonest majorities. So in classical blockchain, in Bitcoin, in case of dishonest...
No security with dishonest majority.
Well, they can only perform double spending attack. That is quite easily
detectable. You can break consistency.
detectable.
If you have a 51% attack, you can break consistency.
Yeah, but it is a double spending attack.
Yeah, so that is, you don't get consistency. So.
They can't, anyway, they can't put incorrect transactions into blockchain and so on. But looks like in
so that is, it's the same way, right? Here, it's exactly the same thing. We want to protect against consistency. So we need to get something that's consistent. We need to have a blockchain that has consistency.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So 2 questions. A, is there any way to incentivize the committee to actually be honest?
Yeah, so I didn't have much time to go into incentives. This is actually the most interesting thing. Yes, definitely, you would like to pay you need to pay the committee to act, and it's not an easy question, right? All this reward-based approach where people put in some...
yeah, I imagine it's especially complicated because, right, like a miner might have some different incentives once he's in the slow mode. So, like, forcing the slow mode might be...
So I think this question is just not well understood overall, right? In like for proof of stake, it's very hard. Here, it's as hard. So maybe let's discuss it afterwards.
Okay, just one other quick question. You don't save on space, right? Because whenever you enter the slow mode, all the transactions still have to go to the blockchain, right?
Yeah. But it's only then.
Okay.
Right.
But if you ever enter this,
No, you don't have to put in everything. You can just put in the hash and then.
Okay.
So you don't have to put everything into the underlying blockchain. You can just put the hash and then the final ones.
Okay. So if you've been in the fast mode for a year, like you don't have
so
to,
here I give a simplified overview,
Okay.
but really the right way would be to every now and then you're going to checkpoint some hash into the underlying blockchain. So that's just the hash of that, and then you only need to give the recovery from that last checkpoint.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael.
Thank you.